Who may I invite to share with us, share with you? Crowdsourcing. But what a sophisticated crowd, unbelievable. One of the conclusions. Bob.
I think what you are saying, as I understand it, is that you are challenging Carol Weiss's theory-based evaluation with a small t to connect with theory with a big T, which is, by the way, evaluator or scientist theories, which you endow with a tremendous amount of prestige. But we know from Kuhn and others that paradigms change, and what is in the repository can also depreciate.
It's true. Then it is, if the system works, deleted from the repository. And secondly, you refer to Kuhn. If I may refer to Lakatos, they had this debate in the 70s, but apart from that, this is not a joke. Lakatos was saying, you should not take the theory as a theory. You should look for how many attacks, empirically, this theory had survived. Not by reducing the informative content, so let's say by making it an immunization practice, but if it is attacked many times and it still holds, then there is a protective belt. And Kuhn never talked about a protective belt, because for him it was a social process. And it is a social process, but it can be a social process with a protective belt. So I follow you, but don't misunderstand me, that not every theory that an academic calls a theory should end up in this repository. Is there one other conclusion or disagreement conclusion with this statement?
My name is Jos Vazen. Frans, thank you for this very enlightening discussion. I just want to ask you one question. Having moved from an academic doing evaluations to an evaluator who thinks he once was an academic, I think the mind-to-gap reality has become much more closely to my daily life. And I wonder who should we educate with your very enlightening messages? Should it be the evaluators who are multitasking, who are basically doing everything, doing shopping list evaluations, or should we educate the policymakers and the commissioners who are actually providing the policy spaces and the incentives for doing evaluations? So it's a very difficult question. That would be one of the conundrums.
I understand, yes. I've given that a thought. If we as evaluators, in line with Wildavsky's statement, that we are able to speak truth to power, if we as evaluators not predominantly are the first in their training, of course, in their work, to take this gap up and do something about it, it looks like kindergarten. You cannot, on the one hand, say, we are evaluating you, your programs, your interventions, your strategies, and on the other hand say, well, you know, it's too difficult to multitask cognitively. I mean, what are you doing? So that would be the first thing. And this is very harsh because, unfortunately, I know a lot of also young people in day-to-day practices that don't get the time. That's what they say. They don't get the time from the commissioner, or they don't get the time from their bosses. The boss say, do some theory, but on Friday afternoon. And they say yes, so they do some theory. But they should be more, you know, speaking truth to, you know, the power which is saying, do on Friday afternoon some more theory. In my case, I would say, do some more theory on Sunday. There is no rule that says you shouldn't work on Sunday unless when your religion is asking that. So, I mean, this is a little bit of a joke, but first and foremost, the evaluators have to do it themselves. I think secondly, but here we have Marlene Laupli, who is working on a book on commissioning. She is in this book on commissioning bringing this point also on the agenda. So the commissioner has also a task here, but it is too easy to say, because the commissioner has not asked for it, we don't do this. I mean, is that an evaluator who speaks truth to power? I would be a little bit upset. So maybe this is a little bit of an answer. In practice, it is maybe more difficult to realize than what we now discuss.
Okay, let's take one more, and then we'll break for lunch. Oh, so we have.
Hi, I already introduced myself earlier, Susan Tamdong from the Philippines, an independent consultant. I've always enjoyed your talk, Frans. Thank you so much. This has been really interesting. My question is about the lack of explanation in evaluation. I was wondering if it is because, and I want to ask your opinion on that, is it because there's so much emphasis on quantitative methodology since the 1950s, and the case study has been put on the side or even considered as a less scientific way of doing evaluation? Because if we start to maybe go back to that again earlier than the 50s, when case study was even more used to explain things and to contextualize things, maybe we will have more explanation.
Thank you for your nice words. Unfortunately, my words are not as nice as yours regarding your explanation for the lack of explanations. Case studies are, absolutely gorgeous to do and very informative, but it is difficult to use a case study for an explanation with some overarching, informative content, because it is based on case studies. In particular, when on a single case study. When it is a multi-design case study, longitudinal over the years, it's getting different. So I think that is not a very good explanation for the lack of explanations. Also because of a second reason, if you go back to the history of evaluation in the 50s and in the 40s and in the 30s, because it was there even before Lyndon Johnson coined the Great Society, you see that doing the evaluative research was always linked with an explanation, with a couple of hypotheses, and sometimes even with overarching theories, and then we speak 70, 80 years ago. So the emphasis on quantification is there is no a priori relationship between more emphasis on quantification and less theory. Actually, I would say it should be the other way around. When you have large data sets, you easily run into so-called problems that are in need of explanation, because you have, a lot of interesting, I hope, interesting data. So you can see trends, you can see path dependencies, etc. So for me, these two things, nevertheless, interesting remarks, cannot explain, definitely not explain why there is that gap. So maybe somebody else has a theory on this. That would be interesting.
Okay. First of all, thank you very, very much, Frans.